now we got the final division here, and you know what, definitely more interesting than the past couple of years, I would say, based off of how some of the teams finished, and that is the NFC South. So when it comes to the Saints, a little bit different than what we thought. I guess a month or two ago, because we thought Derek Carr was going to be under center. Since then, Derek Carr has now retired,
I would
and
have done the same thing.
he's off the books. Kind of a sad ending to his career, honestly, because when he first came into the league, and particularly in 2016 when he looked like he was going to be an MVP candidate, it looked like he was going to have a promising career, like, be a competent quarterback, but it just, I don't know, just a lot of stuff happened when he was with the Raiders, and then it just didn't get better when he went to the Saints.
I feel like
So,
just the guy like same thing with Carson Wentz. Like
mhm.
one injury kind of turned his career
Yeah,
around, and he never was able to hit his ceiling.
yeah. And just like a lot of stuff happened though, like between the coaching, his stuff off the field with some of his receivers were doing, and then you go to the Saints, and the Saints, they just have not been able to find that guy since Drew Brees retired. And now you're going into the year with, you drafted Tyler Show, and you still got Spencer Rattler on the roster. It's just the Saints, I'm not expecting a lot from this year. Let's just put it that way. I think this is a team where they should have teared this thing down years ago and started from scratch, but they just tried to stay competitive, and it just really hasn't worked out. Since Drew Brees and Sean Payton left, this team is just, stuck in the mud. But yeah, they still got some veteran players on this team. I think you've definitely seen it. Maybe Chris Olave is a guy they could potentially trade, maybe get something back for him.
The
But
thing that's so tough about that is like I was thinking that too, and then like last year they signed Kamara to an extension. It's
yeah,
like I don't even know what they're doing.
yeah, and Kamara's about to be 30, I'm pretty sure. So and he's not the same. He's not like how he was when he first broke into the league. Because the
Like
Saints
you
had a
said,
really Saints
they
had
just
a
hold stuff.
mhm. Yeah, and the Saints really have had a good duo with him and Mark Ingram. That was a really good duo when Kamara first came into the league. But yeah, I just right now they're very easy to put last. We're gonna put them in last. And then when you look at the other three teams, so I do want to talk about the Carolina Panthers. I do think this team can improve. I don't know if I'm going to say to the point where like we're talking playoffs, but I think, and you're probably going to say the same thing, I really liked what I saw from Bryce Young down the stretch. I mean, he played pretty good games against both teams that represented in the Super Bowl with the Chiefs and the Eagles. Now, he did lose both of those games, but, they came back against the Chiefs, and then, of course, the Chiefs pull it off in the end like they did. And then against the Eagles, like, I forget who was the receiver, but
Really
very
get
yeah,
drop that ball. Yeah.
yeah, right there in the end zone. And maybe they could have pulled off an upset there. But you definitely saw a different Bryce Young when he was benched, and then when he came back and started games for them again. When Andy Dalton started a little bit there. Um, but yeah, you saw a different quarterback. And now they went out and they drafted Tetero McMillan, who I guess outside of Travis Hunter, who will also be playing receiver this year, playing both receiver and corner. Tetero McMillan was probably the best receiver going into the draft, but then now they go out and they get him. They add him to this receiving core. I liked what I saw at Chuba Hubbard last year. We talked about Rico Dowdle before. They signed him over from Dallas.
They got a lot of running
Yeah,
backs.
yeah. So I think this Panthers team is going to be a bit better. They did make some improvements on the defensive side of the ball because the defense also was not good last year. But I do think this Panthers team, you're going to see improvements out of it this year. And I think the main thing is Bryce Young continue to grow and develop. And, it's compared to where he was prior to the benching and, the previous year where it just was not looking good. Yeah, I mean, we could see a different version of Bryce Young in 2025, and I hope that's the case because, seems like a good kid, and he took this very seriously, and having Andy Dalton there, I think helps when you have that veteran presence, backing you up. So, I think we could see some improvements out of this team. But again, I'm not going to say playoffs. I think that's still a little premature, but I think maybe you could see them, maybe win one or two more games than they did last year. Well, I actually really haven't looked at their schedule, so I don't know how the schedule looks right now. But we'll see what happens. And then the other two teams, the Falcons and the Buccaneers. The Falcons had a very weird year last year. With the quarterback play particularly. Kirk Cousins, they brought him in. They give him $100 million guaranteed, a 4-year contract, coming off of an Achilles injury of his own, and he was a mixed bag, and he fell flat towards the end of the year there, and that led to them putting in Michael Penix. It's really weird to say. Like, Kirk Cousins ends up getting benched, and he was playing so poorly, and then you say he also threw for 500 yards in a game as well. But when this first happened, Falcons get Kirk Cousins, I was fine with the move because the Falcons, they've kind of been searching for that next quarterback, since Matt Ryan got older and ended up going to Indianapolis. They had Desmond Ridder, who didn't really work out. Marcus Mariota started some games for them. So I thought with Kirk Cousins, wasn't in love with the contract because of the injury. But you thought Kirk Cousins was going to put together a good season, and he was doing that. It's just, he also talked about getting hurt in that Saints game. I think it was his shoulder or whatever. But that combined with also just coming back from a significant injury, because particularly that Chargers game, that was like the worst game he played. I think he threw 4 picks in that game, and some of them just, one of them he's just throwing it up for grabs in the end zone, like you're playing a game of jackpot. But and also the defense too wasn't great. They couldn't really rush the passer. I think they did address that this offseason. I like the playmakers on this team. Bijan Robinson, very good running back. Drake London had his best year despite, how Kirk Cousins played. I did like what I saw out of Darnell Mooney at times last year. I feel like that's another team that needed another weapon. Kyle Pitts, talk about him every year, does the same thing. We're still waiting on the breakout. And he's a trade.
Maybe this year. Maybe
this year. Maybe this year. And he's also a trade candidate too. I saw some of that.
Yeah, Eagles will probably get him. He'll be the best end of all time.
Yeah, if he goes to the Eagles, I think that was it, right? The Eagles were potentially interested. Yeah, great. Yeah, add him to that offense. So probably, yeah, exactly. He'll be the greatest tight end of all time. But I do like where the Falcons are at. And you know what? I think from the limited action that we saw from him, I thought Michael Penix did okay. I thought he looked good.
The Washington game was good, I thought.
Yeah, the Washington game was good. The Panthers game, it was a shootout, and he did have some turnovers in the game as well. But I think in the limited action that we saw, he was okay. I think he can only build on that. And like I said, the defense, I think they improved that a little bit. So this Falcons team, between them and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're going to be battling it out for that division. And I think it could be a scenario where the division is your only pathway to the playoffs, because we talked about the NFC North and some of the teams in the NFC West, the NFC East. There's a ton of teams that you can make the argument for that can make the playoffs and take those wild card spots. But this, for me, when it comes to the NFC South, if you don't win this division, odds are you're probably on the outside looking in. But yeah, I do like where the Falcons are at. And then obviously with the Buccaneers, for those that know me and Dami, of course, big Baker Mayfield guy. Once again, put together a good year with the Bucs. Found his permanent home in Tampa. He's looked good these first 2 years. Back-to-back playoff appearances. The playoff game against Washington, left a bitter taste in my mouth because they could have won that game, and then Baker fumbles the ball in that exchange, and they end up losing that game, a close game, last second field goal. So yeah, that hurt. But Baker put together a good year. And what was interesting with the Bucs is I would have thought that with their first draft pick, they would have taken a defensive player. Because I felt like, offense, they're fine. Chris Godwin's coming back. They brought him back. You got Mike Evans. You got Jalen McMillan. I didn't think they needed to take another receiver. And then they take Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. So you add another playmaker to that offense. And then on top of that, they ran the football effectively last year. You take Bucky Irving in last year's draft, and he was pretty good in 2024 running the football. You still got Rashad White. Cade Otton, solid tight end. So, the offense is really good. And I think they re-signed Levante David, who's still playing. One of the few players left from that championship defense. I mean, he's been in Tampa forever. I mean, that's the only team he's known. For me, the thing that could hold Tampa back is the defense. I feel like though, if the defense can be better, they did sign Hassan Reddick. We'll see how that pans out. Because of all the drama from last year with the Jets. But you did go out and you tried to improve the defensive line. Getting after the quarterback was kind of a problem. You still have Vita Vea up the middle. So I mean, for the Bucs, for me, they are right now a 10-11 win team, maybe 10. But what they win last year? I think they won. Yeah, they won 10 games last year. I think that's kind of where they're hovering around. So that's kind of how I see it. I kind of still will give Tampa their respect because they've even back with Brady, they still have controlled that division. I still kind of see that the same way here, and then the Falcons a close second. Then you got the Panthers and the Saints. So I don't think you could disagree with this. This is probably an easier division to rank. So that's kind of how I see this division. What do you say about the NFC South?
So first off, you mentioned, the winner of this division is going to be the only team that makes the playoffs out of this division. When we look at the other divisions, especially in NFC, when you look at Philly, even Washington, Detroit, Minnesota, the Rams, none of these teams are as good as those teams. So it should be only one team that makes the playoffs out of this division. Now, it's just really going to depend on if you're going to go Tampa Bay or Atlanta. That's the only argument. As much as Bryce Young looked like he improved, I don't have Carolina competing for this division at all. I don't even think they're really close to those two teams. And then the Saints are just an absolute dumpster fire. The Saints is just a team I just completely disagree with everything they're doing. When you look at them signing Kamara, as much as Kamara is one of my favorite players of all time, doesn't even make sense in your timeline. Olave, like you mentioned, should probably be gone at this point. Should probably be a trade target. You should probably be flipping the whole thing. But the only thing I could say for the Saints that would kind of make sense is you have those two players. You have some guys on defense. This division flat out sucks. So you get a quarterback or something, and you could be competing in a year. That's just the type of division this division is. Tyler Shaw, I think, was an absolutely awful pick. If he proves me wrong, great. But I think it was a horrible pick, especially because, like you said and like I said, this New Orleans Saints team is going to be awful. And when you look at a loaded draft class next year, they could have drafted Tyler Shaw this early and then be selecting Arch Manning, Drew Aller, Kay Klubnik, somebody next year. So that's why I disagreed with that. I would have just rolled out Spencer Rattler and whoever and kind of just, tanked. But for the Carolina Panthers is a team that, like you said, Bryce Young is a guy that we're rooting for. Bryce Young is a guy I'm not going to sit here and act like I thought he was going to be good. I didn't think he was going to be good. I mean, I thought he was kind of small and nothing really stood out. But what I saw towards the end of the season, he has a pathway of being a good quarterback in the NFL without a doubt. He wouldn't have been my first overall pick, but I am rooting for the guy. Like you said, he seems like a cool dude. I hope he succeeds. I love Ted McMillan. A lot of people are kind of in separate directions on Ted McMillan. I really like him. Again, he reminds me a lot of somebody else in the division named Mike Evans. Just a big physical receiver, a guy that's a true X in the NFL. And I think it's perfect for Bryce Young. Like, you want to see your quarterback improve, see if he's the guy, your franchise quarterback. You bring an X receiver, use a huge draft pick on him. I really like that. I like Xavier Legette as well. You know what's weird? Same thing with Rome Odunze and a couple of other people. These receivers get drafted with high capital, and they don't have the seasons you think in year one, and people just forget about them. I think Xavier Legette could still be a guy in his offense for sure, a good number 2 receiver. And they have good running backs as well. This Carolina team isn't bad. I think they're definitely going to be a step above the Saints, a step below Atlanta and Tampa Bay. And now you're just going with Atlanta and Tampa Bay, who you think is the number 1 team. Unlike you, who's very high in Tampa Bay, I think it's a coin flip, honestly. Like, I really do.
I still think it's a coin flip, but I still would, I'm going to side with Tampa just because they've kind of, been the owners of this division for the last several years now. Between Brady, of course, and now Baker the last couple of years. That's why I would say that. And now you got Michael Penix going into his first full year. So, but I definitely think it is close. And I had the Falcons winning the division last year at 10-7.
Very, very similar to Minnesota. Biggest question mark is the young quarterback. But for me, like, even though the Falcons have a question at quarterback, you look at Tampa Bay. I don't know. To me, Tampa Bay has a lot of questions. Is Godwin going to be the same player? I don't think so. I thought that injury was awful. Mike Evans, he's always been consistent. He's a guy that's physical, so
He's always had
if he's
1,000 yards in a
going to
season.
be active, but guy isn't getting younger. Levante David not getting younger. Like, the team is old, and I think Atlanta is a team that's rising. Like, Drake London should only be getting better. Bijan Robinson should only be getting better.
Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts should stay at his plateau. But I think, like, Atlanta's rising. Tampa Bay, I don't know. Like, this is a coin flip for me. I guess I would still go with Tampa Bay. Even a receiver room behind Mike Evans and Godwin, when you look at McMillan looked good last year. They bring in Mecca Buku, I think is going to be an immediate impact guy, similar to Ladd McConkey, Tez Johnson. Like, they have a deep receiving room, regardless of all that. And I like Bucky Irving. Always love Bucky Irving. Rashad White's pretty good number 2 back. Baker, he's good. Again, very similar to Baker, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, guys we talk about, guys that are good in like that middle tier. Everybody has a drastic view of them. I like a Baker Mayfield leaves it all on the line. Like, that's the biggest quality I love about him. I think outside of like Josh Allen and Jackson Dart coming into the league, like Baker Mayfield is with those three guys.
Look at the couple runs he had last year. I mean, the playoff game against the Commanders, he trucked Bobby Wagner. I mean, he doesn't care. Yeah, like you said, he leaves it all out there.
Like, it's close. I don't know. Atlanta, I feel like, is just getting better. Tampa Bay is getting older. I think maybe Tampa Bay hangs on this year for the division, and then Atlanta probably passes them after that. But again, same thing we said with J.J. McCarthy and a bunch of teams with these young quarterbacks. Michael Penix comes out, and he turns out to be a top-half quarterback. I could see Atlanta easily passing them in the division. So it's a toss-up. I guess I would go with Tampa Bay now, just from what we know.
All right, so that is we covered every division around an hour and 20 minutes. So, not surprising there when it comes to these podcasts. But I guess we're gonna wrap up here now. Dami, where could they find your podcast so they can go check it out?
Sloppy Saturdays, you could find everywhere pretty much on YouTube. Sloppy Saturdays on wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much everything. Sloppy Saturdays. TikTok, Sloppy Saturdays. So basically everywhere, same thing, Sloppy Saturdays. I appreciate the shout out. And also too, you guys find our full draft recap. You could listen to Ken there for 2 hours as well. So
yeah, if you want to listen to me for 2 hours, you can do that as well. So Dami, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we are going to try to do a AFC State of the Union. Because if we were to do every single team in one episode, this would be about 4 hours. So we didn't have the time for that. But, Dami, appreciate you coming on. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And like Dami said, wherever you get your podcast, you could always find Infinite Sports if you want to listen to us on the go. We're also on TikTok as well, so give the TikTok a follow too. So, as always, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder along with Don Matassa signing off. Have a good one. We'll talk to you guys next time.